Welcome to the We Watch This movie podcast, where we sit down and dissect the latest and greatest in movies. I'm Dan, aka the Nolan connoisseur, joined by Jackson, the man with a couple of films on his watch list. How you doing, mate?
Not too sure about that one. 2,344 films on the watch list. Otherwise, Dan, you know how I've been. Fantastic. Never been better.
And today we're joined by our first special guest this evening. Nick, how you doing, brother? Nick's Flicks on Instagram. Nick's Flicks Fix. Am I saying that right, Nick?
You are saying that right. Nick's Flicks Fix. It's a mouthful. It's a tongue twister.
Can you say it 5 times fast? Can you say that one 5 times fast for us, Nick?
Oh, jeez. All right. Nick's Flicks Fix. 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 There we go.
I'll pay it. Yes.
I think a lot of them. I think from the first one it was a little bit jumbled. But...
One of the best. One of the best movie reviewers here in Australia, besides
thank you.
Besides myself, isn't that right, Jackson?
No comment.
This is another Hugh Jackman film. We've covered Prisoners, we've covered Bad Education. Today we're covering. Today we've got another Hugh Jackman special. We've seen The Prestige, we've seen Bad Education. Today we're going to take a look at Prisoners. So you guys excited to dissect this one today?
Absolutely. Very much excited to do this one.
Jackson.
Dan, I can't wait to have alternating cold and hot showers.
Oh my God. All right, why don't we get straight into it, guys?
What in the world did you do?
Someone has to make him talk, or they're gonna die.
We're not gonna help Keller, but we won't stop him either. Let him do what he needs to.
I know you know where they are.
Where's my daughter?
How far would you go to protect your family? Keller Dover is facing every parent's worst nightmare. His 6-year-old daughter, Anna, is missing, together with her young friend Joy, and as minutes turn to hours, panic sets in. The only lead is a dilapidated RV that had earlier been parked on their street. Heading the investigation, Detective Loki arrests its driver, Alex Jones, but a lack of evidence forces his release. As the police pursue multiple leads and pressure mounts, knowing his child's life is at stake, the frantic Dover decides he has no choice but to take matters into his own hands. But just how far will this desperate father go to protect his family?
Just
Dan.
how far?
Just
How far would
wow.
you two go?
Pretty far.
Would you go this far?
It's a little extreme, to say the least.
It's a very dark, depressing, sort of immersive experience, isn't it? It's 2.5 hours long. I don't think it dragged at all. I wanted more, if anything. I think the director here, now I'm going to say his name. You guys can go after and we'll see who gets it right. Denis Villeneuve. I used to be French.
I've got Denis Villeneuve.
Ooh, okay.
I watched a YouTube video.
I definitely didn't. What are you talking about? What do you mean watching YouTube videos and how to pronounce names? We've never done that on the podcast.
That was
Jackson,
the extensive. It was the research I was doing for this episode. How to pronounce Denis Villeneuve.
It's the first thing. Jackson, give it a crack.
I did. Didn't you hear?
No.
Oh, well, I'm not going to be repeating it.
What'd you guys think? We'll start with you, Nick.
I love this episode. So I've only seen it once before this repeat viewing, and that was when it first came out on Blu-ray. So I was very excited to watch it again. And I agree with what you were saying, Dan, is that even though it has a long run time, I wanted to see more. And the first thought I had finishing this movie, I was like, this actually could be extended into a mini-series. Like I could see it being a HBO mini-series.
Definitely. That would be really good HBO miniseries or a 6-pack sort of episode. It would remind me a bit of like a True Detective sort of style.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I was thinking as well. And it's kind of made me want to go back and rewatch at least that first season of True Detective. But there's enough character development to work as the 2.5 hour story. But there feels like there's so many more branches we could go off, especially with Loki. And I would love to investigate some of the priest. I think would be an interesting storyline to go down a bit more. And then I think his name was, I got names here, sorry. Bob Taylor, whoever David Dalmatian played. the maze guy. I think it'd be interesting to investigate.
He's always a creepy. He's such a creepy actor, isn't he?
Yeah, because all I remember him as is the crazy guy from Dark Knight. Like that was my first big exposure to him.
Yeah. Shit, he was in the Dark Knight. I couldn't place where this guy was from, but he's such a striking actor. He's gonna make for a cracking character actor as holy shit. He's in the new Suicide Squad. Okay, back to Prisoners. That's what we're talking about. Here we go. So this is my first time watching it, and this is my first time seeing one of Denis Villeneuve's films. I couldn't believe it. It turns out I actually own this Blu-ray for a couple years.
First one of his films.
Yeah, first time. I'd never seen Sicario. I'd never seen Enemy.
Goodness.
Hadn't seen Blade Runner 2049. So this was a really absorbing watch. I'm going to agree with both of you. 2.5 hours long. Certainly didn't drag. Could I have done with more? Maybe after a few cold showers to wash away some of the bad taste and the pretty harrowing and grief-stricken feelings I had. Look, it is certainly a bit of a tough film. It kind of gets a bit lost in its own ridiculousness by the end. It gets a little bit pretentious. I could see why this script was real hot property in Hollywood before it eventually was produced. For me, the performances, particularly Jake Gyllenhaal, were what really held this film together and was a big, big win. So I can't wait to really get stuck into it. This synopsis I've given you as well from the top, it kind of feels like it goes into spoiler territory, but this movie takes so many twists and turns as we get lost in this impossible maze alongside it that it's going to be really hard to discuss without going into spoilers. So how about we both all three of us get stuck into it?
Yeah, so, why don't we do it? Let's just, before we get into it, I'll just say to anyone who hasn't seen it, go out and see this film. I mean, it hits on cinematography. Roger Deakins, incredible. The music, sensational, even though there's not a lot in it. When it hits,
not a lot at all.
When it hits, it hits. The acting from the ensemble cast here, fantastic. The direction from Denis, the screenplay, it's just hitting on everything. So I can't recommend this enough. This is probably one of the better mystery thrillers, dramas of the last 10 years, I would say. I can't think of one that even beats it.
And it feels like a bit of a sleeper hit too. I feel like not a lot of people actually talk about it as well. Yeah, so I think it's a heavy, heavy recommendation to go watch this movie.
If you haven't seen this and you're currently listening to this podcast, we're going to spoil the shit out of it. It's certainly an experience that you want to sit through, not having any clue what's going to happen, just like I did. So with that ado, let's go into spoilers.
Spoiler alert. What's great about this discussion today, guys, is I've seen this film, I want to say 5 times. Jackson's a first viewing, and Nick, did you say 2 times?
This was my second time watching it. Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to get different perspectives on each of us. But one thing I want to say straight off the bat, Hugh Jackman nominated for an Oscar in 2013 for Les Mis and not for this. Is that a crime?
Yeah. That was a pretty stacked year, though, for Best Actor performances, though. Like, I did some research because I thought, how did this only get an Oscar? I guess it's a obligatory Oscar for Roger Deakins. The moment that guy makes a movie, everyone in the Academy is writing his name down for a short list. But you've got a stacked year here with Matthew McConaughey in Dallas Buyers Club, The Runaway Success, Bruce Dern in Nebraska, and Leo in Wolf of Wall Street.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
If you thought Hugh Jackman should have been nominated, that's massive. If you thought Hugh Jackman should have been nominated, what about Jake Gyllenhaal?
Yeah,
this guy was the big standout.
Yeah, him too. Very, very subtle performance, but all the way through, he was just so great.
Oh, absolutely. And I think I was going to agree with Dan for a second. I was like, yeah, it's a huge crime. Then we just rattled off that list of names. And I was like, who do I take out? Who do I take out of that list of nominees? But I feel like being the sleeper hit that I think it is, to only be nominated for cinematography seems like a little bit of a crime. Rightfully so for cinematography, because it's Denis and Deakins together is a dream. But I feel like
June. Is he doing June?
Is he doing Dune?
He'd have to be, right? Especially after Blade Runner. Then right off the coattails of that success. But this movie on many levels. He's not.
He's not.
Damn.
What's he up to?
Damn.
Yeah.
We've got Greg Fraser, who's an Australian cinematographer.
Whoa, nice.
Shooting for Dune. And you know what? He's also shooting for the Batman.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, okay, he must be good.
I mean, if that test footage is anything to go by, then I'm excited to see the aesthetic of that movie. So
Absolutely. Here's some of
Could be
Greg
good.
Fraser's work. Killing Them Softly, Zero Dark 30, Foxcatcher, Lion, and
Okay.
Rogue One.
There you
Yeah,
go.
right.
This is
So-
one talented bloke, all right?
Killing
So
Them
where were
Softly
we?
is another sleeper hit.
What were we talking about? We're gonna do our best to keep this podcast as lighthearted as possible because we're gonna get into some real dark and dingy themes. So, gentlemen, if you need to get a cup of
That's-
water or anything like that, just give us a yell.
Well, that was I purposely put off watching this movie literally till this morning because I wanted it to be fresh. So I woke up this morning at 6:30, and the first thing I did was put this movie on. So that's how I started my day.
Wow, what's
And,
that like?
Oh, dude, it's been dark. It's overcast in Brisbane. It's very dour. And then I watched Prisoners,
Yeah.
and I feel dirty. I'm not gonna lie to you. I just feel very unclean right now.
This is another thing with Hugh Jackman. I could go on about him for an hour here.
You probably will.
This is the performance that made everyone want him to play Joel in The Last of Us. This was the performance.
Who's talking
I
about
should
Who's
see
talking
that.
about the Last of Us movie aside from you, mate?
Well, it's not a movie now; it's a show.
What? It's a
So
show.
We're pushing for him. Yeah, HBO have picked it up now.
Bullshit. Who's attached?
Yeah.
No one
Nick-
yet.
No one yet. No.
No one yet. It's all fan casting. But we do know that Craig Mazin is doing the script
Chernobyl.
with Neil Druckmann. So Chernobyl and then Neil Druckmann, who wrote the video game, they're working together. That's what we know so far.
Very cool stuff. Nick, did you play The Last of Us?
I've just replayed it recently because I'm very excited for The Last of Us Part 2. So, and I've stayed away from all spoilers. I know there was some leaks and I've stayed away from all of them. So I want to experience this game. Love The Last of Us.
So, Jackson, first viewing of this film, give me your deep dive thoughts. You really enjoyed it?
Really enjoyed it. There's a lot going on here with the themes, particularly some of the religious elements. Detective Loki, Jake Gyllenhaal. We don't think we learn his first name either. Why is he called Loki? What's the deal with his tattoos? Why is he wearing a Freemason's ring? He was part of a Catholic parish when he was young, and they're in Philadelphia. There's a shitload going on, so this is going to be tough to talk about after a first viewing. But the plot, the screenplay was really gripping stuff. Like I mentioned in our initial thoughts, I thought towards the end it started getting lost up its own ass a little bit. I thought that having Melissa Leo come together as, I guess, the film's overarching villain was a bit like, hang on, what the hell is this? This is an
Did you
actress
see
in
that
old age
coming?
makeup. No, I
see
didn't
that-
see it coming.
It
What I
wasn't
lo-
predictable.
It wasn't. This is, look, I'm jumping way ahead in the segments here. My favorite scene, my favorite shot, Detective Loki picking up the picture frame and noticing that Melissa Leo's husband, Mr. Jones, had the pendant, and all he had to do was notice that pendant earlier, and just that subtle performance on Loki's face when he's realized this was here in front of me all this time. I could have avoided all of this. Absolutely blew me away. So
Yeah.
things like that, I thought that was fantastic and very rewatchable movie. I love a lot of the mise en scène that was going on, particularly with Franklin's house, Terrence Howard's character. Did you notice and pick up on that he was playing the Star Spangled Banner, playing it pretty horribly on his trumpet, and his house was painted in a blue, red, and white. The garage door was white, the side of the house was blue, and the door was red. And it was a really odd color scheme. But what do those three colors point to?
Yeah, it's the American flag. There we go.
It's the American flag.
And the American
it was
colours, yeah.
Yeah, this is from a French-Canadian director. It was his first film released in the English language. What's he trying to say about American? What's he saying about with all these religions at play?
I haven't I've gone down the rabbit hole a little bit with this movie, but I don't have an answer for that, but I will capitalize on what you're talking about now with the themes and symbolism in this movie is definitely one of the reasons I think Denis was the right director for this. I don't know another director who could have handled such subtlety with the themes.
David
and
Lynch.
with the who? Sorry, David Lynch. We'd get such a weird version of Prisoners if it was David Lynch. Oh my god!
I would say
It'd be so
to
good.
that, Nick, I'd say David Fincher would be
I was
the other
thinking
man.
Fincher. Definitely stylistically.
Felt like Seven.
It had like a 7/Gone Girl vibe to it for sure. There was definitely elements of the shots where I felt Gone Girl, but I feel like and then for his first film in the English language, so with Denis, I feel like it's definitely one that there was a lot of risk taken with showing so much symbolism and going so deep into the themes it goes for. He's obviously proven himself since when you watch films like Arrival and Blade Runner, especially Enemy. But yeah, I don't have answers for a lot of the themes, and I just haven't dived down that rabbit hole too deep yet.
There's a lot of well, we see Keller. He's a Christian man, and they show it throughout different themes throughout. Even in his car, there's
The crucifix, yeah.
the crucifix in his car, and we know that his wife's name's Grace and his mother's name was Mary. Just little subtleties that you pick up throughout, and even towards the end, his descent into the darkness. That whole theme there, I thought that was the best part of the whole movie. His just descent, and are you with this character? Are you with Loki? See, I was on his side the whole time. I was on Keller's side, but when I talked to someone else, they're on Loki's side, and that's one of the fascinating parts for me as well.
Yeah, there's definitely it's a very interesting take on morality, sort of who has taken the correct moral path to get to the solution, which is obviously finding these abducted girls. But when you really break it down, is how much of there is a difference between the moral stance of Detective Loki and the moral stance of Keller himself. And I think Keller's a very interesting character in the sense of he is very heavily at the start of the movie portrayed as a man of God, a man who wants to protect his family at all costs in that regard. But what is he? I mean, they say it in the synopsis, what are you willing to do to protect your family? And as we find out more about his past, obviously his dad killed himself when he was young. He's battled with alcohol. And in the movie, he goes down that dark descent. And then we get, like you said, the physical him going into a dark descent. And then when he finds that beacon of hope, turns back again, and he starts praying at the end of the film when he finds that beacon of hope, which is the whistle. And it's almost like a full circle. He definitely has a full circle arc in the film.
It's almost like he's descended into hell, and he's got the whistle at the end, and he's asking for God. He's asking to be risen back up. That was incredible. The whole ending, I thought you could say it was ambiguous, but I think they even confirmed that they actually shot that Keller was found, and they had an exchange, but they removed it. They removed it from the final cut of the film. So, which I think that was the smart decision.
I believe there's a point to be made here of Detective Loki having his name derived from Norse mythology. He's the only character who seems to be existing outside some of these religious constructs, even though it's plastered all over his body, and he speaks about how he was part of a Catholic parish. Plus, his captain, who appears several times throughout the film, Richard O'Malley. O'Malley's an Irish name, and that's often associated with America's east and northeastern areas like Pennsylvania. So Loki, as a detective, he doesn't seem to take the side of any particular morality. He seems to be very upright and righteous and almost idealistic, that he doesn't want to give in to being violent or taking any measures that he doesn't have to, except when they take in Bob Taylor. And of course, he violently assaults him. That's the only time he kind of flirts with giving in to his darker urges to solve the case, as he's so frustrated he can't quite get there. And it's clear that the pressure that Kaladova's given him, he's starting to crack. Yet he still sticks within himself. He's not only does he solve the case, but I guess he ends up saving Dover. And as someone with a name in Norse mythology, it's almost like a bit ambivalent that what we're trying to say, that Keller is saved by God, I suppose, despite everything that's being happened. We hear him a couple times praying and wanting to confess his sins. And even though it was clearly a ruse to get into the Joneses' home, he comes to Holly Jones and says, I want to fix this. I'm here for penance. I want to confess. And they're really interesting points. It kind of balances the morality between the two men. There's clearly duality at play here. And the times that we see them interacting, really powerful stuff, particularly the scene where Loki's following Dover, and Dover first goes into the bottle shop and gets the bottle of whiskey or scotch. We're not quite sure. What do we think of that sequence?
Fantastic scene.
That's a acting powerhouse scene, that one, with Hugh Jackman coming into the car and both of them going off each other. I particularly noticed it in the second watch how much Loki, or Jake Gyllenhaal's character, talks to Keller like a police officer, like someone who
very distant and cold.
Supposed to be very distant and cold. It's
a cold movie. Everything's snowing and you just want to put on a jumper
all the time. Oh, that movie! It's just dark and depressing. But the way he talks to Keller in not just that scene, but every other scene, and I think the scene where he comes out of the liquor store, sits in the car, is sort of Keller latching onto that and being like, this is the reason I'm taking this into my own hands, because he doesn't feel like Loki's coming from a compassionate level, even though we know as the audience that he is. It's very interesting to see those two dynamics clash after getting a very good good look at both sides of the coin when it comes to finding these girls.
Yeah, it's an interesting stance that the team and the script here takes on the systems and some of the procedural things that not only the police but I guess governments in the world kind of goes through. That if we're going to tackle this case, it's got to go through all these different processes. For example, Alex Jones is released after 48 hours in custody when they can't find anything to charge him for. And Keller says, well, that's ridiculous. Find something. There must be something that you can hold him for another day.
Yeah.
And once he hears his release, from that point on, Keller's just heading straight down.
What did you think when Alex Jones said, he said creepily, what did he say? He said, they cried when I left them or something.
He said they only cried when I left them.
What did you think of that?
I don't know if I felt like it clashes a little bit with sort of what we're supposed to assume is his character, because obviously we find out later on that he was the first abducted child by Melissa Leo and her husband. So he's obviously had some form of, I don't know if the phrase is Stockholm syndrome, but there is definitely something going on there that he has been affected by and traumatized by. I felt like it was a little bit tonally wrong, sort of not. Yeah. It just felt a bit like it did feel like something he would say.
Yeah, it's an interesting play here from the screenwriter to kind of include that one, and we get some of these nods that tend to pop up. I guess it's to keep dramatic tension. It's dramatic tension.
I think the purpose was to push us around the
push the plot.
Yeah.
And it's definitely movie making sort of device for sure. So, and it propels the plot a lot because that's sort of the infuriating turning point, even more so for Keller, where he's like, well, this guy knows something. But yeah, it felt like the way it played out was a little bit too on the nose. If it was like, if you heard that in a real life crime story, you'd be like, wait a second, this guy's a little bit more clued in than we think.
But he did have something wrong with him, the character. He wasn't all there.
No, he's definitely
clearly not.
Contributed to the traumatizing.
He'd been emotionally and physically abused for the last 30 years, the poor guy.
Was he talking? Maybe he was talking about his parents when he was saying that. Have you thought about that?
No, I haven't actually.
That's an interesting read. Nick, I want to bring Nick, I want to bring up a word that you mentioned. That was the T word, trauma. This kind of relates back to our Midsommar review, which I know that Dan really had a great time revisiting, so much that he turned it off an hour in.
Did you like Midsommar, by the way, Nick? Sorry to cut you off, Jackson.
You should.
Midsommar is one of those movies that has grown on me. I've only seen once. Yeah, I walked out not confused, but I was like, I'm not sure what it was. And the more I think about it, I'm like, okay, I liked it. I own it. I haven't watched it since, but yeah, it's one that I love. Hereditary more. Let's still say that.
Me too. Go ahead, Jackson.
Well, make sure to give it a watch. All right, don't listen to Dan. Let's give that one another
listen to your episode. I know what I'm in for.
Perfect. So that T word, trauma. Everyone in this movie seems to suffer from some kind of trauma, and everyone handles it differently. So Kaladova, it's pretty obvious the trauma he's suffering from. His daughter's been kidnapped. The moment that she's kidnapped, it's almost like he's accepted that she's going to be dead. Even though he seems to be telling other characters that we need to find her, she's still going to be alive. He's clearly a man who prepares for the worst. We see that when he's got the full survival basement. He's got guns everywhere. He carries around a handgun that he threatens people with in several scenes. We don't see him directly threatening Alex Jones, at least not when he kidnaps him, but it pops up later when he goes to Holly Jones's house. And we've got, of course, Alex Jones. What was his original name? Was it Barry Milland?
Yeah,
before he was kidnapped.
Barry Milland.
Yeah, so he's handled trauma by somehow now getting on this Jones's kidnapping scheme. Mr. Jones, who disappears and ends up in the father's basement, he obviously didn't handle the trauma very well. Eventually, the 30-odd years of kidnapping children had gotten to him, and he visited the father once and says, "Here's what I've been doing." Came back, and I get it's not explained. It's part of the movie's power, but it's also a little gets a little bit ridiculous. I guess he was asked to be duct taped and thrown in that basement. Dover ends up drinking, and the father was found drinking by Loki in his house, also face down on the floor, which we see Dover end up on later. So a good bit of foreshadowing there. And of course, we have Maria Bello's character, Grace. She's clearly on some kind of antidepressants going into the movie. And then the first maybe 3 or 4 days, and after we believe that Anna's died, she's been sleeping the whole time. She's very, very depressed and grief stricken. It's sad stuff, but it's just interesting how the film covers, and every character is just another take on this theme of trauma. What do you both think?
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I think and we obviously Loki as well. It's alluded to the fact that he was potentially molested at school as well, because he has a throwaway line when he's threatening the father. He said, "I did 6 years at a certain boys' school, and I'm sure they'd love to fucking know about you or something." So, and
reminds me a bit of Spotlight. I was like, "Oh, please don't go down this path. We've already had enough stuff here. We don't need to touch on this."
Yeah, we don't need to get any darker than we already got. But I took that as a potential alluding to the fact that he may have had some abuse happen to him as well. It definitely may not have happened, but I definitely think that this is the main theme of the film, is sort of when trauma strikes, or when trauma from the past is brought up, how do you deal with it? How does that for lack of a better word, like demon inside, how does it surface, and how do you control it to get to your end goal? And it's a very, very dour but very interesting look at that.
Where do you guys both sit with the question I posed before? Whose side were you on throughout this narrative?
Did you ask a question? Sorry, I got a bit lost.
Did you sympathise with Loki or Keller more? Whose side were you on?
I found myself more on Loki's side.
Did you?
But it's tough, because it mainly boils down to, like, how would you personally react in that situation? Like, I don't have kids, so I don't know if one of my children were abducted, if I would react like Keller personally. But I don't know. I think I found more of a attraction to Loki's personality as a person. I feel like I identify more with his reaction to events rather than Keller. But I also am like, doesn't shock me that Keller acted the way he did with his background, his past, and him holding into his rage, the way he lashed out like that, taking literally the law into his own hands. I wasn't against it per se. So
yeah, Jackson.
I'm going to answer that question by dodging it entirely and saying that that I felt a lot of sympathy for Terrence Howard. I thought his performance in Break on Birch was great. It was good to see Terrence Howard back in a movie. I mean, the poor guy got himself cut out of the MCU. For better or for worse, I suppose. I don't know if it was a trade up or a trade down or a lateral trade for Don Cheadle as War Machine, but that's enough about the MCU for this episode. The poor guy just got roped into Keller's scheme, and even his wife, Viola Davis, had that really powerful line of, we're not going to stop him, but we're not going to help him. Speaking of Keller having abducted Alex Jones,
It's not often you see a film where Viola Davis is sort of in the shadows a little bit in terms of acting, is it?
A little bit, yeah. I feel like no one really talks about her. But then again, no one really talks about Terrence Howard either, and they both give standout performances. And going to what you were saying about Terrence Howard's character, when he does get roped in, I felt the whole time, I was like, he actually doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want, but he'll look weak to Keller. Keller is such an intimidating and demanding sort of personality that if Terrence Howard's character leaves, this is kind of Keller being like, well, do you not care about finding our daughters? Like, you don't care about your daughter if you're not here. So, and then we obviously see Viola Davis when she goes, I want to see him, and him talking about Alex Jones. And then when she finally is confronted by it, she's like, this is wrong. Like, I actually don't have this in me to see this happen to another human being. So again, it's that morality tale that's very interesting. And like Marshall was saying, everyone deals with trauma and morality in this film, no matter how small of a role they have.
That reveal when we pull the sack off Paul Dano's head, and he's got this massive bruise. That was a tough shot, but very powerful.
Do you remember the scene with the hammer God damn it! And
He's smashing the hammer into the
God.
wall in the basin. Oh.
And Terrence Howard's almost frightened as well. His character, he's literally barely.
He is.
He doesn't want to be involved, does he?
Neither
he's
does Keller. Clearly, it's a really gruff performance from Hugh Jackman, but you can see throughout that he's really wearing regret. He's not taking any of this well, nor should you. He clearly doesn't want to do it, but for him, this is the last straw. He has to find his daughter, and he believes that he's the only one that can do this. Very arrogant, but I'll pay for the bloke.
Yeah, and I feel like that sort of epitomizes at the where we finally get to see his hot and cold water shower contraption at work, when he is just so reluctantly turning on that hot water. He just and part of me is intrigued, or I was sorry intrigued by that sort of. He's literally talking to a child, someone who has the IQ of a child, who's not really comprehending what's going on.
That's what makes it so sad.
Does he have the IQ of a child?
And this is another one of the many questions this film decides to throw at you in a 2.5-hour runtime, and then give you your own existential crisis. But you sort of, that's obviously from what we're told is what he's dealing with. And I think that's what Hugh Jackman is trying to break. He's trying to break that facade that he thinks is potentially there of this, low IQ human being.
Tell me you didn't feel sympathy for him when you heard those cries out of that shower.
Oh.
It's impossible not to. Like it's you would never ever, if he say to you, like he says his line, they only cried and you left me like, oh, I hope this guy gets killed. Like I really want him to die. And then it starts happening and you're watching, he's bashed up and now he's confined in a room and he's getting hot water on it, and you're like,
just elevates.
It's kind of bad. But I think that just one of the things the movie does so well is allows you to sort of be in charge of what you're taking away from the film. It's a very open narrative in that sense, where you as the viewer are morally challenged yourself, and that's fantastic.
Is Paul Dano's character here the same one in Swiss Army Man? Does he go on to wake up on that island with Daniel Radcliffe's body and use him to fart to safety? Is it
that
the
a
same
sequel?
character?
Is it?
God, this guy just loves the weird performances, doesn't he? There Will Be Blood. He's an absolute acting powerhouse.
Guess what he's in next? Guess what he's in next, Jackson?
Come on, throw it on me.
The Riddler. He's playing the Riddler.
That's
In
right.
what?
Yeah, in the Batman. Perfect. Perfect for
And we'll
him.
be definitely covering that here. When we watch this.
We're definitely not going to
podcast.
watch every Batman movie in the lead up to it, are we, Dan?
Only the good
Batman and
ones.
Robin.
Batman and Robin and Batman Forever, right? Yeah, they're the only good ones, yeah?
Oh, I thought we were going to cover every episode of the Batman 60s TV
Batman
show.
vs Superman is the best, don't you think?
I personally thought Suicide Squad.
That's
Viola
the
Davis
epitome
again.
of cinema.
Yeah, I almost, when I was writing notes for this movie, I almost wrote down Amanda Waller for some instead of Viola Davis.
Oh, did you
I
write
was like,
notes?
I got a few little notes.
Oh, okay. We don't know
I'm
anything about that at this show.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. I'm definitely a pen and paper sort of guy when I watch movies. So.
For anyone that didn't know, Dan just put up a completely black, darkened image of his screen. Okay.
Look, I still sympathise with Keller. Even through all this, I was still on his side the whole way. Maybe it's my love of you. I don't know. But I was rooting for him the whole time. I knew he would get to the bottom of it. And even though I love Jake Gyllenhaal in this, I was always sort of wanting him not to get caught, to get more answers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
He gets his answers. Gets more than his answers, doesn't he?
Well,
Gets a good
here's
dose
another
of a very interesting drink.
Would he have got those answers if he didn't capture Alex Jones?
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
I think so.
Actually,
Maybe not Hugh Jackman. That's the weird part, because we're at the hospital and Terrence Howard's daughter has been rescued, because we see a flashback where she gets to escape, but Hugh Jackman's daughter is still taken back by the not yet revealed kidnapper. And the Terrence Howard's daughter, when they're asked, Hugh Jackman's questioning her, says, "We heard you in the house. We saw you. We could hear you in the house."
Yes.
And that's when he realizes, "Oh, I was at the Joneses' household earlier, and that's where they've heard me." So, and then that's when he goes back with the tool bag this time and goes, "I'm here to."
That reveal
for my
was
penance."
chilling for me. I had goosebumps.
Oh, incredible reveal.
Now, which reveal was chilling? Was it Melissa Leo as Holly Jones being the film's true villain, or was it Joy in the hospital, Terrence Howard's daughter? Because for me, I didn't quite connect the dots until we got to the home and we had Color with just that real evil, distorted look on his face, like he knew what he was about to commit. He just had so much anger. Was radiating off the screen, and the Melissa Leo has the gun. What was it for you?
For me, it was when Hugh Jackman. For me, it was when Hugh Jackman entered the house. You could just tell on his face that he knew, and then we saw the whole thing play out, and it was the whole thing was chilling. The whole scene.
I think it's hard for me to determine on the second watch because obviously I knew where this movie was going, but the line when Joy says, "We heard you in the house," that's where I went, oh shit, that's right, that's how this goes down. So on my second viewing, that was definitely the more chilling moment for me.
We're talking a lot here about the A plot in the film, but what about the B plot with Loki trying to chase up all these leads and he ends up being lost in his own impossible maze? Like there was no way that this guy was ever going to work out what the fuck was going on unless Bob Taylor had rocked up to the vigil outside the Birch's house where the candles are being lit. Very coincidental. Now, I must say I enjoyed it, but watching it, this stood out as a massive plot hole. Like if Bob Taylor had not been striking that bear, if he hadn't have chased him, if they hadn't have tracked this guy down to this mall that he frequents where he buys children's clothes, I mean, we could go on and on and on with all the coincidences here. It gets a bit full on. Jake Gyllenhaal, again, I love him, my favorite part of the movie, but what do you guys think?
It's funny you say that because when I was watching it this morning, I was like, if this movie had been 90 minutes to 2 hours long, everything would have felt like a coincidence more so than it potentially was. And I feel like just because of the way the movie's paced and the way that things get revealed, I feel like I can sort of give a pass to that sort of coincidence. Because it makes sense. We've had enough time that the girls have been abducted. Now we've had a search party. Then we get the vigil. And then we get the introduction, and we actually don't go back to him buying the kids' clothes till a little bit later on, or it's at least a few scenes later, if I recall correctly. So I feel like the pace and the length of this movie sort of allows for that. But I do agree there is a heavy amount of coincidence there for that to actually happen. It makes sense with his character. He's a copycat criminal, I guess, because he hasn't really killed anyone. He's a copycat psychopath.
Yeah, he's obsessed having escaped his own abduction by the Joneses, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very weird stuff. And the fact that he's got all the snakes. That's,
what was with the snakes?
Yeah, see, it's.
Well,
I can't work that one out.
I think it alluded to the fact that they were using snake venom in the drink, but I could be wrong. I think I read that somewhere.
I remember hearing two terms, which we'll probably bleep so that we don't get an explicit rating, but we've got LSD and ketamine in the drink.
I heard that as well, so I'm a little bit confused. I didn't know which one to pick, so...
I must say, if you want to have a party, that sounds like a pretty decent cocktail.
It's a party at the Jones house, right?
Party at the Joneses. You're all invited. Just don't look under the Interceptor.
Yeah, don't go under the Trans Am or under anything in that house. But yeah, the snakes, they may have said something about it, and I think I've watched a few YouTube videos that sort of explain it a little bit more, but I think more of the obsession was the mazes, how his entire house, all the walls are covered with these insanely intricate mazes, which then is a big part of the themes of the movie is being to escape the inescapable maze.
Yeah, it's impossible. All the mazes he's drawings, Bob Taylor tells Loki when he's being interrogated that they're maps. He never calls them a maze. He calls it a map.
Yeah, that's right.
And there's no way out. We find that when they're pulling apart the Joneses, sorry, not the Joneses, when they're pulling apart Bob Taylor's house, there's the head of the crime scene investigation unit says, no, there's no way out of that maze.
Which is even crazier because then it's revealed that he's copied all of these mazes. Like he hasn't really come up with them himself. He's so traumatized that was his way of dealing with it, is trying to just copycat these mazes to deal with that trauma.
This movie does a great job as a detective story with all of its MacGuffins. First we get Alex Jones, then we get Bob Taylor. Like the M word is fucking fantastic in this movie. Sorry, Dan.
You and MacGuffins, my God.
I would agree though. I think there's definitely elements of like, think about the whistle as well. That's brought up quite early on.
The socks?
Yeah, the socks. Oh, the socks that was another great reveal for me, is when Loki goes back to the house and finds the sock in the garden. I was like, oh my God, that's like, this guy's willing to go to so many lengths to ultimately, I guess, it's deal with his trauma, but it's just not the way someone who obviously hasn't been that traumatized would deal with it. It's weird to me.
If you want MacGuffins, go and watch the latest Star Wars movie and come back to me.
This podcast is already sad enough. We don't have to talk about that.
No comment. Dan, do you want to give us a rundown on the ending and what were your thoughts on it? You've been a bit passive here, mate. I want to bring you back into the world if we watch this.
The ending, like I said before, I think it's we go and see this descent into madness with Keller, and he's battling these demons of what will you do to save your daughter throughout the whole thing, and his moral compass is gone out the window, and by the end of the film he's literally in the darkness. He's been put in the bottom into hell, and he has that whistle. He prays, he asks, can I have this last chance? Can I be saved? And we see Jake Gyllenhaal. He hears something. We don't know what, if he knows, and the movie goes to black. But he has that face of like, yeah, well, he's there. I'm going to save him. And obviously, as I said before, they cut it out. But perfect ending. I'm glad they cut it out, because a little bit of ambiguity does movies like this a world of good. Gets us talking, and yeah, I can't say enough good things about the film, guys, from start to finish. Like I said, I'd love to see a TV series. Look, it is dark, it is gruesome, it's not for everyone, it's a little bit slow at times, but you know, Denis Villeneuve, as I call him.
I knew we couldn't go this whole episode without someone booking it, and of course, it had to be our main man at Down Movies.
All these films are slightly slow. If you look at them, Blade Runner was a long haul. Yeah, but I love that as well. Arrival was also sort of slow, and he just likes to take his time with his storytelling, and that's what makes him such a, as you said, Nick, a master craftsman, and cannot wait to see what Dune.
Oh boy,
man, my excitement for that film! My goodness me!
Can't wait.
Just you wait until we watch the David Lynch version first.
Oh, do we have to?
You tell me we are. What do you mean? Do we have to?
Oh yeah, I'm the one that said
the master of your own demise. I quickly on the ending, if that's all right, if I can just jump in. I think something I find super, super interesting about the ending is the fact that both daughters have been found. They're reasonably okay. Like they've obviously been drugged and it's an awful scenario, but they are safe. And I find it very interesting that Loki doesn't seem content with that. And that's why I feel like he goes back. He goes back to the Jones house, and he has this sort of, there's
relentless.
Yeah,
he's
relentless. He needs to win. You know what I thought about while watching this? And Dan, this is going to make you so. This is just for you, buddy.
I
thought about say the
name.
The Prestige.
Yeah, Nolan.
We get dueling roles. We get men obsessed by pride. They need to win. They need to do it. Okay, we are trying to save lives, but they need to get to the bottom of it.
Nolan, no.
Dan, this ending, very ambiguous. What does it remind you of? Maybe
Inception,
a feature in 2010.
Oh, I thought Inception straight away.
Yeah.
Nick, are we gonna have to make an appearance on that episode of your podcast?
You might have to. You might look. I want to do a Nolan introspective, so I think we might have to tee this up. We definitely might have to go through. I'm watching Interstellar tonight. I've already done Inception.
Oh my god!
Oh my god!
And I haven't
yourself, buddy.
Haven't seen it since the cinemas. I've only watched it once, so let's see if it holds up.
Do you have IMAX there in Brisbane?
No, we had a former IMAX screen at the cinema I used to work at, so I saw it on that, but it's nowhere near as good as I've been to the IMAX in Melbourne. I unfortunately didn't see an IMAX movie there in my time there. I saw Legend of Tarzan.
Oh, you poor thing.
Amazing.
I know. It was the only movie showing when we went. But I would love to experience. Like I saw Dunkirk. We have 70mm here at our Palace Cinemas. So I saw Dunkirk on 70mm. That was beautiful. So I want to try and see Tenet on 70mm. Oh God, that would be incredible.
If Tenet is the first movie back in theaters, Dan, we're going to IMAX, buddy.
I think I might see Tenet 100 times.
Yeah. Might have to just to understand it.
So anyway, back to Prisoners.
Also, guys, I just want to say quickly the not only the cinematography is brilliant, the score by Johannesson. I believe that's how you say his name. He's unfortunately passed away a number of years ago. He was the right hand man of Denis, and those two were sort of like Nolan and Hans Zimmer. They're inseparable, and his nuanced sort of score here, very soft but beautiful, and elevates all those emotional scenes to another level. I can't say enough good things about the score in this as well.
It was solid, but for me, a little unremarkable. I'm not sure how much more we could have wanted, though. I did notice that the film didn't have much of a score, so it was really relying on the heavy atmosphere and tension and performances to kind of shine on through.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think there was more times that I didn't notice a score than noticed, which I think helps the film a lot. But when the score popped up that I did notice, Johan Johannesson is just incredible. Like, you think about all of his other body of work, like this is definitely something you can add into that sort of realm of, it is pretty damn good when it's on there.
And the editing as well. The editing
is flawless.
I mean, you could go on all day.
That's why it's paced so well. Is because it's edited to a T. Like, it's very well edited.
What was the IMDb rating and all that, Jackson? Walk us through the reception of the audiences worldwide.
At Dan Allen Movies on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm so glad you asked. So this one had a reported budget of $46 million, which is quite modest. We've got some big names, and it's a 2.5-hour picture. Heavy hitters on the team producing this, like Roger Deakins and, of course, Denis Villeneuve. Grossed $122.1 million worldwide. So it was a box office success. Nick, you mentioned it was a sleeper hit, and it did quite well. So I guess audiences certainly enjoyed it. And when we look back to 2013 and some of the films that picked up Oscars, it is really bizarre that this didn't get any nominations. I think you're 10 years on podcast that you're doing at the moment, Nick. I think that's going to be great whenever you get to 2013. If you get to that one in 2023?
2023, that'll be the one.
Yeah, this has to be a standout from that year. So IMDb rating 8.1 out of 10. Very strong on IMDb from over 500,000 ratings. So clearly audiences enjoyed this one. Rotten Tomatoes 80% from 246 critic reviews. Much of the positives went to the performances, and a lot of the criticisms from critics went to the tone and just how dark and disturbing this film gets. It's very claustrophobic. I don't think there's one joke in the entire 2.5 hour film.
They said that was to a detriment. That was to a detriment. Right.
Yeah, that was to a detriment. But if it's what you're going for, then
that's it's funny you say that, because I actually thought that watching it today. I was like, I can kind of see how some people just wouldn't enjoy this movie. I think it doesn't necessarily need a niche audience to enjoy it, because it's quite accessible as a I guess a Hollywood movie. But I can definitely understand how, it's not what I'd watch with my grandma, an afternoon tea movie time with grandma. I don't know.
Probably
if
also a little bit slow, isn't it? It's probably also a little bit slow for the general movie.
For sure.
Particularly getting kicked off. The first dinner scene with the two families I thought that actually dragged, but I was invested. I was absorbed. Definitely did drag though. Audiences though, again, loved it. Rotten Tomatoes 87% audience score from listen to this, nice. Over 100,000 user ratings. 2013 was a good year for Rotten Tomatoes. Don't know what happened. Metacritic 70 from 53 reviews, and finally, shout out our number one social media service for film lovers, Letterboxd. 4.1 out of 5 from over 250,000 watches. So this one has been loved by audiences since release, and I can't believe it took me this long to watch it.
Nick, do you have a Letterboxd?
I do have a Letterboxd. It is Nick's Flicks Fix. So, and I put it on today. 4.5 I gave it. It's not the perfect film. There's definitely things we've already discussed, like some of the small plot holes in it. But to me, I definitely think it was in one of my top films of 2013. Like, I remember loving this movie when I saw it.
Wow, there you go. Nick, you've just kicked off our final rating segment. So, Dan, how about you get stuck in here? What was your final rating for Prisoners?
Final rating for Prisoners is a 9 out of 10. Phenomenal film from start to finish. Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal put on some of their best performances of their career. Jake is so underrated, isn't he? He needs to get some more clout in the industry. He's gaining more and more.
The guy
as the
has
years go
massive
on.
clout.
I think he
it's
only
performances
just
like this he's been massive. What was his first film? Donnie Darko.
First film was Bubble Boy.
Bullshit.
So that was like when he was like huge. Because Bubble Boy was before Donnie Darko, I believe.
Wow.
He was a child actor in a few movies because he had October Sky. But Donnie Darko is the first one where I noticed him because I watched Donnie Darko. That was like one of my first formative movie experience sort of films. So he reminds me of, I think Donnie Darko when I think Jake Gyllenhaal.
You're not alone there, Nick. I think there's a lot of people in our generation who saw Donnie Darko very early on. One of those movies where it seems a hell of a lot deeper until you actually watch some really deep stuff like Andrei Tarkovsky and even David Lynch's work. But yeah, Richard Kelly, Donnie Darko, great movie. You ever seen that, Dan?
Yes, but it's been a while, and my memory is as you know, like a goldfish. So we might come back to that one later. 9 out of 10 from me. I recommend it to everyone. Best mystery thriller of the last 10 years, and go out and see it if you haven't. And we've just spoiled the shit, so you're an idiot if you're still here and haven't seen it.
It's a masterclass in tension, though. So I think, like, even watching it this time, knowing how the movie ends, I was still riveted by the way this movie's made. So it doesn't matter if you know how it ends.
All right, we've been beating around the bush enough. I've been putting this off as best I can. It's time. At Marshall on Film, Letterboxd, Instagram, Facebook. Rating, okay. 9 out of 10, red whistles. I was going to go for the 8 because of some of these earlier plot elements I've mentioned. And the film does get a little bit lost. Melissa Leo is the villain towards the end. It was getting a bit much, but Jake Gyllenhaal won me over. I don't know about the two of you, but when Detective Loki was driving Anna to the hospital, having taken a bullet for her, he was saved by some Quentin Tarantino Pulp Fiction religious acts of God here, like a miracle where the bullets just grazed his head. But I sat there fist pumping, cheering the screen as he's going through traffic. And at that point,
how
I
good was
like,
that scene?
Holy crap.
So
the
good.
whole movie was worth it by that point. So 9 out of 10 red whistles.
Jackson.
I'm excited to watch it again. Yes.
You might be as big of a fan as I am of Hugh and Chris Hemsworth for Jake Gyllenhaal. You are a fanboy at this point.
Oh, mate. The guy has such an amazing catalogue of work. Oh, Nick, it's just come to me. Source Code, was that 2010?
2011.
Oh!
2011.
Next year, Jackson.
We are doing Source
Next
Code.
year.
When you get to 2011, you're going to hit me up. We are doing Source Code.
We're doing Source Code because that movie is brilliant.
That movie
Unfortunately,
slaps.
I don't want to take a poop on the parade here, but I did just have to watch Prince of Persia and the Sands of Time.
Oh,
which
what
is
was
another
that
Jake
like?
Gyllenhaal vehicle. Oh, it doesn't hold up. I don't think it held up in 2010 either. But
I
was not a fan on that rewatch. No, it's exactly what you would expect with Disney trying to do a video game movie.
Yeah,
It's
Pump it
exactly
into
what
my
you would
veins.
expect.
Give me more, Jake.
More
Jackson,
Jake.
are you excited for Denis' future work now? You haven't seen Arrival. You haven't seen Blade Runner. You haven't seen Sicario. Like, you're in for a treat. I tell you what.
Yeah, I'm in for such a treat. I've got Enemy lined up here. I think I'm going to have to bump that up to the top of the watch list. This watch list just went to 2,345 movies. Enemy, you're up next.
Enemy is a time. Enemy is. I would be very, very interested to hear your thoughts on Enemy. It's
very
his
divisive.
least accessible movie in the English language, but it is very. I think it goes a lot deeper with its themes than Prisoners.
I think
does.
Jackson is going to love it, actually.
Those
you, Jackson.
are the kind of movies I want. Give me
The films you were showing
sense.
before, I'm like, I think Enemy is right up your alley.
So what's our final ratings? It's a 9 across the board.
It's a 9 across the board. This is
Wow.
another top tier movie for us. Well done, gents.
Why don't we check out our sponsor for today, ExpressVPN.
Oh, we have sponsors.
ExpressVPN.com/WeWatchThis for 3 months free on your 12-year plan.
Woo, Dan, what's ExpressVPN?
ExpressVPN is a service. No matter what your location, you can change your VPN. You can be in Mexico. You can be in Brazil. Say goodbye to your blocked services and websites.
You could be in a hole somewhere in Pennsylvania.
For example, if you want to access Australia's Netflix and get some of those films early over there in the US, you can do that, or other way around. It's just as easy as that. Keep those prowling eyes away as well. There's 160 locations across 94 countries to keep your real location hidden. So if you guys need a VPN, this is the one I've used for many years now. It's the best going around. ExpressVPN/we watch this for 3 months free. Alright guys, so we've covered Prisoners, and now for our final segment today we're going to talk about what we watched this week. Another movie that we would recommend or maybe not recommend. Jackson, why don't you kick us off? What else did you watch this week?
We've been talking about this movie for several weeks. It was following me like a bad smell, and I finally had to dig right in and just get lost in it. This week, I watched Upgrade.
Yeah, nice.
Ah, yes.
Nice.
This movie, made for a fraction of the budget that you'd think it would be, shot here in Melbourne, and it has to be Melbourne. Don't worry about the American accents or Logan Marshall Green, aka not Tom Hardy. It has to be Melbourne. Upgrade was fantastic. This, for me, better than Invisible Man. I wish I saw this first. A lot of fun, despite its sometimes dark and also depressing themes, and certainly the ending. It's another one of those creepy, benevolent AI movies, but I loved it. This came in at 8 out of 10 David Cronenberg influences.
Yeah, it was an 8 out of 10 for me too. Nick, where were you sitting on it? I remember seeing your review.
Upgrade I loved, and I think I was about an 8 out of 10 as well. It definitely has the feel of a lower budget movie, but that doesn't stop it from being incredibly exciting. And we see a lot of that. It feels like
a really rockin' John Carpenter or James Cameron movie from the 80s. Lee Winnell knows his stuff. I cannot wait for this guy to really get his hand at a big budget. Come on, Hollywood. If we're going to throw out hundreds of millions of dollars at the MCU movies, someone other than Blumhouse can give this guy a chance.
I know, right? I watched Pulp Fiction again, guys.
Absolute
classic.
Oh, I'm rubbing the hands together. I've been waiting for this. Dan, what did you think of Pulp Fiction?
My God, on a rewatch, I miss so much. I mean, that GIMP scene straight off the bat, Jesus Christ, so funny. What... it's such a bizarre film, but it's just got classic written all over it, doesn't it?
Mm.
And
it's hard to deny it's a classic. It's just so...
Oh, yeah. I came in at an 8 out of 10 in the end, and I got blasted for giving it an 8. Low.
Wow.
But I feel like it drags at some points, but it is a crazy film. Like, there's so many rewatchable scenes, so many funny moments. I think at the moment with Quentin where he has a cameo and can't stop saying the N-word. I think of Bruce Willis in the film, bizarre but so funny. Samuel L. Jackson, again, fantastic. What was in the briefcase, guys? Tell me.
Well, it was a MacGuffin briefcase, so that's all you need to know.
Yeah,
15-year-old me would tell you it's the soul of Marcellus Wallace, but that's because I read that on the internet and couldn't form an own opinion when I was 15.
What do you mean? We do our own research and we come up with our own points.
It's exactly what I did today.
Nick, what did you watch this week?
I have been obsessing, like I think many people, over The Last Dance, which is on Netflix, about Michael Jordan, there's a certain scene in the latest episode which you get him filming a certain movie that he did. So I went back and rewatched Space Jam. And I tell you what, nostalgia pushed me through that movie, but it's actually not terrible. Like
it's a lot of fun.
I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. Like it's better than bad, but it's definitely not amazing.
Better than bad is a 6 out of 10. You sound like Dan here. You and him should be doing game reviews. You don't give anything less than a 6, do you?
Come on.
I'm trying not to watch movies that are less than a 6. I'm doing that for this 10 years on retrospective.
Exactly. Yeah, 6 out of 10 is better than... What would you call 6 out of 10, Jackson?
6 out of 10's good. 6 out of 10
means you're an idiot. Get out of here.
I'm an idiot.
8 out of 10 Pulp Fiction, enough said.
What do you give it a 10?
Space Jam?
No, Pulp.
Pulp? Come on, mate. We're going to save that for a future episode, all right?
What do you give Pulp, Nick?
I give it a 9, simply because I actually prefer Reservoir Dogs to Pulp Fiction. So Reservoir Dogs is my favorite Tarantino movie. So I have to give that a 10, and it doesn't seem fair to give Pulp a 10. So maybe a 9.5, because it's damn good.
Oh, yeah, I loved it. But Space Jam, I haven't seen that in a while. I remember loving it as a kid. But, yeah, it probably doesn't hold up, does it?
The thing that surprised me the most was I thought the animation was going to be awful, and then I was actually shocked. I was like, this actually isn't bad for 1996, considering that Michael Jordan is supposed to be interacting with. I don't know if you've seen the episode of Last Dance, but he's just surrounded by men in green morph suits trying to play basketball. So
is it just like is it like the tennis balls from Lord of the Rings, the Star Wars prequels, as well as isn't it the Avengers where Mark Ruffalo wears a tennis ball like this high up?
They weren't even there yet in 1996. It was a full green screen with people in green morph suits, and that's it. And it is hilarious watching him trying to play basketball against them. And then my curiosity or my nostalgia kicked in. I was like, I have to watch Space Jam again. I watched it a lot when I was a kid. So
they've really pushed that sequel. Like the sequel wasn't out. I want to say it was rumored like 10 years ago now.
So long ago.
I'm pretty sure the sequel was rumored just after it came out, buddy. It's been going on for that long.
Probably.
Yeah. Ridiculous, but anyway, that's it. So we recommend Space Jam or not, Nick?
I recommend it to cleanse the palate of sadness that this movie will give you, because it's a bit more uplifting. But I probably wouldn't watch it as a double feature.
Space Jam double feature. Oh my god, we've really gone off the rails now. Yeah. Far out. And then once you're done, maybe a bit of Pulp Fiction.
Where's my Michael Jordan?
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Where can our audience find you, mate?
I'm on Instagram. That's my main form of communication, at Nick's Flicks Fix. That's where I put up all my movie reviews. And the podcast that I do that we've been talking about 10 years on is on the Finely Tailored YouTube channel. But I want to thank you guys for having me on. It's been an absolute blast. I had a lot of fun talking about this, and I definitely would be very keen to do it again in the future.
Nick, you are so welcome. It's been fantastic to have you on here. Wouldn't you agree, Dan?
I would agree that it's been fucking fantastic. You said let's not get an R rating on this, but we've already blew that. So
I think I said the F word earlier on. I can't help myself. I got a bit of a sailor's mouth. So
our editor will take care of all this. So don't even stress.
Make me look really good, please.
No, all good. Thanks for tuning in, guys. This has been a lot of fun. We'll get you back on, Nick, definitely, for an upcoming film. But it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. You can find us on the We Watch This, on everywhere. Where can they find us, Jackson?
They can find us on Instagram, at We Watch This Podcast, on Facebook, at We Watch This Podcast, Twitter, at We_watched_this, and please check us out on Letterboxd, at We Watch This Podcast. You can find him at Dan Allen Movies on Instagram, Twitter, and Letterboxd. You can find me at Marshall on Film, followed by an underscore, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and of course Letterboxd. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you again soon.